say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's a charmed sort of name. Wouldn't you agree? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, via Google Play, and Spotify to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Fuller House, Jane the Virgin, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Riverdale, Gotham, the Marvel shows on Netflix, Stranger Things, and the Arrowverse on the CW. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Freaks and Geeks, Star Trek, Rain, Friends, and Sense8, and we've looked back to look forward at shows like Arrested Development, Will and Grace, and Gilmore Girls. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for The Crown, Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld. We'll be launching new panels covering Outlander, the Breaking Bad universe, This Is Us, and the Orville. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll revisit one of the all-time and most watched classic sitcoms, MASH. We'll consider the moral implications and quick cancellation of Dollhouse, and we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, game stores, all various parts of the multiverse. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff. It's true, including in these quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to our website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play and on Spotify. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback as long as you check your personal demons at the door. Haha. Today's panel is looking back to look forward at an American fantasy drama series originally broadcast on the WB and later the CW from 1998 to 2006, which has since controversially been given the reboot treatment. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, to consider whether or not they age gracefully, if at all, like a white lighter wholly committed to their purpose, or don't hold up as well, like a demon who would be the source of all evil, who also happens to be in love. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for some time. And today, that show is Charmed. In fact, today is part 1 of our Look Back to Look Forward series devoted entirely to shows named Charmed. In part 2, our panel will begin a water cooler series covering the 2018 reboot of the same name, which also airs on the CW. It should be noted that this panel series at CPU was recommended by viewers like you, so we would like to give a shout out to listener Marcel for the great suggestion. We can't start any series without a hint of plot summary though, so to that end, Charm was created by Constance M. Berg and was produced by Aaron Spelling and his production company Spelling Television, with Brad Kern serving as showrunner. The series' narrative follows a trio of sisters known as the Charmed Ones, the most powerful good witches of all time, who use their combined power of 3 to protect innocent lives from evil beings such as demons and warlocks. Each sister possesses unique magical powers that grow and evolve while they attempt to maintain normal lives in modern-day San Francisco. Keeping their supernatural identities separate and secret from their ordinary lives often becomes a challenge for them, with the exposure of magic having far-reaching consequences on their various relationships and resulting in a number of police and FBI investigations throughout the series. The series initially focuses on the three Halliwell sisters, Prue, played by Shannon Doherty, Piper, played by Holly Marie Combs, and Phoebe, played by Alyssa Milano. Following, spoiler, Prue's death in the third season finale, their long-lost half-sister Paige Matthews, played by Rose McGowan, assumes her place within the Power of Three from season 4 onwards. Charmed achieved a cult following and popularity on the WB with its first episode, Something Wicca This Way Comes. It had 7.7 million viewers at that time, breaking the record for the network's highest-rated debut episode. The show's ratings, although smaller than rival shows on the Big Four networks, were a success for the relatively new and smaller WB network. Despite several time slot changes during its 8-season run, when the show moved to the Sunday 8 p.m. time slot in its 5th season, it became the highest-rated Sunday night program in the WB's history. At the time, at 178 episodes total, Charmed was the second longest drama broadcast by the WB, behind Seventh Heaven in 2006, and at that time it became the longest-running hour-long television series featuring all-female leads before being surpassed by Desperate Housewives in 2012. The series has also received numerous awards and nominations. In 2010, the Huffington Post and AOL TV ranked Charmed within their joint list of the top 20 magic supernatural shows of all time, while in 2013, TV Guide listed the series as one of the 60 greatest sci-fi shows of all time. Charmed has also become a source of pop culture references in film and television, and has influenced other succeeding television series in the same subgenre. The show's success has led to its development in other media, including a video game, board games, soundtracks, novels, and a comic book series, which served as a continuation of its narrative. The longevity of the popularity of the series no doubt resulted in the creation of a reboot series of Charmed, featuring different cast members and characters, which premiered on the CW on October 14, 2018, and it will become the subject of future episodes in this CPU series. Today, for CPU's Look Back at the Original Charmed, we've gathered a magical panel comprised of 3 occasional to frequent panelists and 1 brand new voice, as well as your very involved moderator, and all are eager to dive into our Book of Shadows and be set free by the Power of Three. It should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire series of the original Charmed and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched the original Charmed and plan to do so, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I would like to introduce the panel. What I would like you to do, and I'm telling this because we have a new voice, and I'm reminding you, and I'm reminding the listener as well, what I'd like you to do is tell us your first name, just your first name, not your whole life story, just your first name, and then tell us how you came to watch Charmed. What made you start watching? How did you find out about it? What kept you watching the original Charmed now? And then we're doing a look back. So did you watch all 8 seasons? And then you get to rate your interest in the show, and this rating comes along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. And because we're looking back, you get to provide 2 answers. One for how you felt at the beginning when you first started watching it, and one for how you felt at the end by the time you finished. Everyone understand?
Yep.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Jeremy and Mike, you can't just nod. It's a podcast.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You have to talk. Awesome. All right. So how would you rate your interest in Charmed from beginning to end? Did you love it? You adore the fact that family, love, and sisterly bonding formed the heart of the show. You felt that these themes, even more than the notions of witchcraft and the Power of Three, were the true heart of the show and the glue that made it all stick together, not unlike your role in your own family, like Piper Halliwell. Did you enjoy the show? But your favorite part was the romances, particularly the illicit ones between, for example, Piper and Leo or Phoebe and Cole, because more than anything else, you are a romantic at heart. Though you were perhaps just as excited by the magic too, like Phoebe Halliwell. Did you watch the show more for the main characters, especially Piper, than anything? In fact, your affinity for the characters led you to become prepared to protect and defend them and the show at all costs, especially because you fell in love with the sisters, or at least one in particular. Though the show could be uneven and willfully illogical at times, you also felt that it was a calming, even heroic presence in your life at a time when you needed it most, as the sisters were such strong and meaningful characters to you, like Leo Wyatt. For you, the show was fresh, surprisingly intelligent, and full of heart when it began, but you really could only stick it out through or could only enjoy the Prue seasons. Once Shannon Doherty left the show, you had zero interest in continuing to watch it, like Prudence or Prue Hallowell. Did you start watching the show later in its life, and though you were super underconfident that you would not be able to understand what was going on, or that you would be able to adjust to what you were seeing, you found that it grew on you by the end, at least to the point of the show being a guilty pleasure for you, like Paige Matthews? Did you think the show was fine, even though you felt that some of it could be off, or that the story was kind of out there, and that much of it was not really your cup of tea? You liked the characters, but you couldn't even finish it in the end, and you really only watched it as long as you did because your friends watched it, and you wanted to see what all the fuss was about, like Daryl Morris. Did you arrive to the show later in its life, and it begrudgingly grew on you for a little while, but it was a struggle to find that affinity, as watching and even enjoying the show went against every evil impulse you had? Still, you enjoyed the Phoebe character and some of the villains, but also found that it quickly went straight to hell, and so you bailed after watching it only a few seasons, like Cole Turner. Did you watch one season and decided the show really wasn't for you, either because you were wiped from existence with a change in history temporarily, spoiler, like Chris Hallowell, because you really didn't love the premise of Wicca and witchcraft being at the center of the story and preferred to forget it as quickly as you could, like Dan Gordon, because your parent or guardian figure didn't let you watch it once they found out you tried to do so, like Jenny Gordon, or because you, spoiler, died, like Andy Trudeau, or you did not really enjoy watching the show, though you really only half-heartedly started watching it in the last season. This is because you didn't like the premise and didn't trust what the writers were selling to you, either in season 8 or throughout. Though there might have been a nice ending for anyone who made it to the finish line, you just can't be one of the people who sings its praises, as you have few, if any, praises to sing, like Billy Jenkins. Who would like to start?
So, I'm Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
I'm going to deviate from my normal 2-person description to go with 3, because it's the power of 3. Not really. So, when I started
Sarah's judging
Charmed,
you.
That's fine. I'm used to that. When I started watching Charmed, I actually didn't like the first couple seasons, so I would say I was a reverse Prue, because I couldn't stand Prue. But after she died, I turned into more of a Piper. So I would say in the very first part, I was Prue/Dan, reverse Prue and Dan, and then Piper.
How did you find out about the show? How did you start watching? What kept you watching?
I think I actually just started watching it because it was on at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I either wasn't working or went into work later on. It was just on TV, and I just got hooked on it because it was actually airing at 2 separate times of the day. So I could watch it twice a day, or if I missed one, I could catch it at the later time slot. And then I just got hooked on it. It was like, it started as a guilty pleasure, but then it was actually the first show I owned all the seasons.
Huh. Welcome back, Jeremy. Jeremy, you've been on some other CPU panels. What panels have you been on?
Oh,
Bet you
so
haven't
many.
jumped the shark.
Supernatural. Yes. Supernatural, Westworld,
6 feet
Stranger Things. I've been on lots of them.
You have. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
I came to watch the show kind of like Jeremy did, just the random episodes here and there, and then started watching it with my mom and my brother, and it became like a family thing, and I just really loved it and got hooked and watched the whole thing. When I first started watching the show, I was definitely a Paige. It became a guilty pleasure. I loved it, but at first I was really apprehensive about it, and by the time it was all over, I was really a Leo. Like, I loved the show, I loved the girls, I loved everything about it. And I think it kind of opened my guilty pleasure love of darker TV shows or supernatural-ish TV shows. So yeah, those are my peoples.
All right. Welcome back, Jessica. Jessica also appears on our Riverdale panel and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina panel.
Yes.
Welcome back.
I am Michael, so I am more of a Piper. Reason it is because I started watching the show literally not too long after it came out. I started watching it. I was a big Harry Potter fan at first, so of course I was going to just definitely dive in to Charmed. My mother suggested it, and the first episode I actually watched was actually when they found out Paige was her sister. So the first time she was orbiting on the roof fighting the demon Shax, which was like a moment I was like, oh my gosh, and that's how I got hooked. Been watching it ever since. Love. The main thing is like, it's not the witchcraft, it's not the power of 3, it's mainly that throughout the entire series, the one thing that stays consistent is the sisterhood piece. That's the main thing that stays consistent, because I was raised as the only child, but the one thing that I saw that was always consistent was that sisterhood piece. And every time you see the show, that's the one thing that doesn't break is their sisterhood. It may like been severed for a little bit, but that's one thing they keep together to keep them strong throughout the entire process.
All right. So you're Piper from beginning to end?
Yes, all the way.
All right.
The way.
Well, welcome to CPU, Michael. This is your very first panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm the only one left.
Besides me.
Yeah, but you will get to go last.
That's true.
I am Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, it's great to be here. I started watching Charmed from the very first episode that aired, Something Wiccan This Way Comes. I believe they aired that right after Dawson's Creek to start, if I'm not mistaken. And we all know what a huge Creekster I am. I don't know. Is that what we're calling us?
I don't know that that's the fandom name. No.
Yeah, I'm going to just copyright that right now.
All right.
And so they did a smart thing by putting it on right after that, because I believe I was a freshman in college when it aired. And I was like, ooh, I've got nothing else to do. Jump on this bandwagon. I was a piper. I was a piper. And then I kind of got busy. Like, I realized that I could leave my dorm room and have fun. And so I think I stopped watching probably it live during season 4 or 5. But then I, much like Jeremy, found it later because I was working for an insurance company and I was working noon to 8. And it used to be on in the morning. I think it was on at 9, 10, and maybe even 11. So I was home and I caught back up and cycled through. But I think at the end, I'm probably a Prue. I prefer the seasons with Prue and some of the earlier Paige ones. And we'll get into it later. It doesn't really have as much to do with the characters as it did have to do with what was going on in the plot, I think, for me. That's all the answers.
That's all the answers. Welcome back, Sarah. Sarah is one of our most involved panelists. What are some panels you're on, Sarah?
Well, I was on the inaugural panel of Doctor Who, and I'm still on that. That one's going strong. I'm on American Horror Story, Stranger Things. I'm trying to think of ones that are ongoing. Oh, I'm part of the Star Trek retrospective. So that's going to be going for probably the next 10 to 12 years, I think. There's so much to cover. I moderate the Riverdale panel, and there's got to be more that I'm on. And I'm on the looking backs, like 6 Feet Under, Friends, X-Files, Ally McBeal, just so many, guys. Oh, Freaks and Geeks, all of them. I'm there.
Well, welcome back, Sarah, to yet another one.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And of course, my name is Kylie. I both moderate and participate on the panel most of the time. It's true today as well. I started watching Charmed, I believe. Actually, I had just moved back to Grand Rapids from living and working in the Detroit area for a while. I was not watching it live. I'm pretty sure it was just starting or well into the Paige seasons. And they started syndicating it with the Prue seasons after Shannon Doherty left on like TNT and that stuff. So they probably built on that. And I always liked Shannon Doherty. I know she's got the reputation of being kind of a sassy bad girl, and she also left 90210 in a huff, which I did also watch. So I was intrigued that both her and the girl from Who's the Boss was on the show, so I stopped to watch it. Plus, it's fantasy, it's magical, it's supernatural. That stuff's already in my wheelhouse. So I sat down, watched it, didn't even realize it was a show until I saw it. And I became pretty hooked just based on its premise. I did like all the 3 actresses that were playing the sisters. And at some point, I managed to circulate through all 3 seasons, and then they started syndicating the Paige seasons. And I wasn't sure I was going to like the Paige seasons, but then Rose McGowan won me over, and I liked most of the Paige seasons. So there's one season I don't really love, which we'll get to talk about here shortly. That's why we do when we look back. So if I was going to rate my interest from beginning to end, I would say that at first, I was probably a Piper/Phoebe. I like all aspects of the show. By the end of the show, I would probably say I was a Leo. I think it's a little uneven toward the end, but that's what we're going to talk about here. So today, we're looking back at the original Charmed, our Looking Back series, if you've been following it. Really, it's just anything you want to talk about. It's kind of a grab bag of stuff you want to say, whether you like it or you don't. You can be general, you can be specific. We can talk about episodes or seasons. It's really just anything you want to effusively talk about when we're talking about Charmed. So who would like to start with their recollections, what they like, what they didn't like, that kind of stuff?
Can I go?
You can. You never have to ask. You can just go.
All right. So the one thing that I liked about Charmed the most was that for the first, I think 4 to 5 seasons, the effects were really, really good. But as the time went on, the effects started to die. And I think I read something about this, is that it was because they didn't have enough money toward the end of the series. But that did not stop them from still being creative with what they did, especially with the girls being turned into like werewolves or things like that, which was one of my favorites. But I definitely love how they didn't make Paige into more of a prude. They made Paige into like the actual younger sister, because the way the show ran out actually it was versus the older had the power of movement, and then you had Piper with freezing, and then the youngest child could see the future. But they did it was like the strong, weird one was always the older sister, and then you had the middle one who was just trying to be that balance, and you had the younger one who was always the rebellious. And then when that time went back, when Prue died, then they did the same thing but made Piper the strong-willed one. As we know, she was very timid at first. And then they made Phoebe the more balanced. And then when you saw Paige go back in time to see her family again, you realized that she was the rebel. And so I kind of like how they did that to keep it still consistent, even though Prue wasn't there. One more thing about it that I liked is that they actually continued the series via comic book. And I like how they did it there. I like how they did that and kept it going like that too.
Did you read the comic books?
I did.
Do you own the comic books?
I do not. I actually read them online. I was able to find them online. I was able to read through them, and I loved it. I loved how they continued it, because what we saw in season 8 was pretty much a time skip, but the volume 9 and 10 really put what we saw in the future together and actually made it progress a little bit better, because you find out that one of the Charmed ones has 3 children and not just 2.
Oh, interesting. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And so, you know how destiny is a big thing in the show. Charmed ones had 2 chances to lose their powers, but they chose not to. That actually set off a chain reaction for the elders. And this is what got me, I kind of got mad about this. They made Piper's children, she had a daughter as well, made them the next Charmed ones.
Huh. So it's 2 boys and a girl being the next Charmed ones?
Yep. And that's because, and the bad thing is that Leo was human by then when her daughter Melinda was born. So they gave Melinda the power of orbing, and Leo didn't have that ability at all because he was human. So they messed with both DNA and destiny by making all the children have the same kind of powers. And Melinda inherited Piper's powers to freeze.
I'm kind of want to read those now.
But they're still young. In those comics, they're still like really young. Okay. But still, that was the main goal. And like, spoiler alert, Kyle Brody, he's an elder in that as that goes on.
Huh. Wow, the revelations. Yeah. No, I really kind of got to read it. What did everybody else think? What do you want to say about Charmed to start?
I really loved it because I grew up with brothers. So I secretly wanted sisters so I could be like the Charmed ones.
Jessica, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but it's not really like that. I just wanted you to know. I have 4 sisters, and it's not like that.
Oh, the older I have gotten, I have realized that. But when I watched it, I was like, I want to be like them. I want to be close. And then I got sister-in-laws, and I was like, this isn't how it works.
You were fooled by Hollywood.
I was fooled by Hollywood really, really bad. But I really like this show.
Less, leather pants wearing and halter tops. The amount of that is
none
real.
Of that. Okay. Well, now I know. I feel better about it now. But other than that, I really love the show. For me personally, my love for it grew after Prue died. and I feel like I'm going to get some hate for that. I don't know.
I'm right there with you.
Like, there was nothing wrong with the series when she was in it, but there was just a turn that it took when she left that just kind of brought a new breath of fresh air and made it more enjoyable. And I just really liked the storylines after that. And I know we get into favorite episodes later, but one of my favorite episodes is the monkey one with Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Speak No Evil. And I just loved that because I felt like if Prue was still around, they wouldn't have had that carefree, fun kind of episode. So I kind of loved it when she died, as bad as that sounds to say.
And see, I'm right there with you, though. I never really liked Shannon Doherty as an actress in to begin with. And I don't feel that she did a great job on the show anyway. And you could really tell when it got to the end of the third season that she didn't really want to be there.
It was all due to that chemistry. The chemistry between her and
Holly Combs?
Yeah, no,
Alyssa Milano.
No, Alyssa Milano was really, really bad. And you could see it in the way everything with the chemistry was on that scene, in the scenes. And I was like, oh, no, this can't work. But then the thing is, I liked about it is that there were certain points where you see how far the powers were going to grow, especially Prue's. And you're like, I wonder what would have happened if they didn't have that kind of issue and they were actually working together. That it makes you wonder a bit.
Well, I think it was a smart choice for them to make, for all of the people involved to make, especially when you bring up the fact about the sisterhood piece of it. I don't think they would have ever had that piece if she would have stayed on the show.
Right.
I think they did have that piece when she was on the show. It may have come out a little bit more when there were three happier actresses, because the chemistry wasn't there because it was well known that Shannon Doherty and Alyssa Milano did not get along, which is also pretty par for the course for Shannon. She didn't get along with a couple of people on Beverly Hills 90210. But I like the Prue seasons, and I don't know that I can say that I like the Prue half better than the Paige half or vice versa. I think they're different. The only constants being Piper, Phoebe, Leo, and Cole, because he spans the two eras. And it's because, in some ways, if it didn't start where it started with Prue, I don't think the Paige seasons wouldn't have been as good as they were, because Prue was never really a character that left their vocabulary. I mean, they talked about her all the way up until the very end. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the storylines, especially in the fourth season, which I think is one of the best seasons, are about Piper adjusting to being that older sister without Prue to guide her, and with Paige, she's trying to fit in the family, trying to get used to her powers. So I think the sisterhood is a continuous running theme that is true for all 8 seasons. It just plays out differently with the different people doing the things.
I agree. I preferred Prue to Paige if I had to pick. I liked them both I think they both had their merits. But what I actually liked about Shannon and Alyssa is, they didn't seem like they got along, but there was all of that baggage between Prue and Phoebe, and I think they wrote for it. I think they realized what they were up against, and they wrote for it. And like in the pilot, is Something Wicked This Way Comes the pilot, or did they reshoot that?
So they reshot it. They had another woman play Alyssa Milano's part as Phoebe.
That's what I thought.
And then they reshot it. I think it was something to do with the acting, because I watched both the original pilot and then the one that Alyssa Milano was in, and I actually liked Alyssa Milano's acting in it way better than the original girl.
Okay. For some reason that was in my mind and I couldn't remember. But if you watch the pilot, it's like Phoebe's coming home and there's all that friction there. And I think that was a really nice jumping off point. Maybe they realized Shannon was going to be difficult and they better just establish that at the beginning. I don't know.
I think they did realize it because Aaron Spelling produced both Beverly Hills 90210 and this show.
But one of the things that I like better about the Prue era a little bit is that they focused on their jobs a lot more. I feel like that kind of went by the wayside later. Well, it did, because then they had their own magic school and there was all kinds of stuff. But I liked how at least Prue and Piper had interesting jobs. And then later Paige did, but she left hers. I don't know. I liked them trying to balance that.
It made it more realistic when they did that. I agree. I can see that. They made it realistic. Then when season 4 hit, it can be more magical than more relatable, if you understand it. It became more magical than relatable.
More fantastic, more fantasy.
Yeah.
Because they started to get more into like the mythology of like the source and where is it, and like all that stuff where Cole was like on a ledge in hell and they went and got him, and I don't know. Like, it was all good, but they weren't going that much in depth when it was Prue. It was more of like Monster of the Week every week kind of thing. So, which you all know I love a good Monster of the Week. That's like my jam. So
for those of you who are wondering, the person who originally was cast to play Phoebe was Lori Rahm.
Oh, yeah.
She left the show. She decided not to go on with it.
Was she in Law and Order?
She was in a lot of random TV shows, and she did video game voices.
Wasn't that the girl on Angel?
She was in NCIS, Los Angeles, The Nobodies. She was in a lot of video games.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of Elizabeth Rahm.
She was in Resident Evil.
I'm thinking of Elizabeth Rahm, too.
Yeah, it's a different Rahm.
Yeah, she's not in a lot of well-known things.
I feel
she
like
left for personal reasons.
Oh. I feel like I've watched that pilot, but maybe only once or twice. And it's not something I've chosen to revisit for any reason.
I don't think I ever have watched it. Now I feel like I need to go find it.
No, you don't want to find it.
You guys probably are going to agree with this. I feel like I'm going to get mass agreement, but I don't think it would have been as popular with her.
No.
In the role.
No. You needed a big name. You had already, Holly Combs was already pretty much a smaller name, but Shannon and Alyssa Milano were big names. So having them in there just...
But Holly was pretty big because Holly was in...
Picket Fences.
Oh.
He was like a child. Like, she was younger in that, like maybe teens. So
I think Alyssa Milano brought the quote-unquote bombshell aspect to it. She was the one the boys lusted after on the show.
She was definitely their sex symbol.
Yes.
Yes, she was.
Although that kind of blurred a little bit when Paige arrived, because Rose McGowan at the time was still dating Marilyn Manson, so she had a little bit of a sex pot thing going on in her outside life, which she carried into the show. She's not there anymore. She's changed. I want to say that I don't know if you want to talk about favorite seasons or storylines. Both my favorite seasons and my favorite storylines, and I may not be popular in this opinion, was the Chris storyline. First of all, I thought Drew...
You and your Chris, you are always bringing that boy up.
Because he was cute. Number one. Number two,
Sarah, I'm sure you've heard it too. She always talks about Chris.
Not with Sarah. We don't talk about Charm. I talk with you about Charm.
Okay.
But I do talk about Chris because he was cute. But also, when he came on the show, you had no idea. I mean, that was a very well-written mystery, and maybe one of their last well-written mysteries, because you had no idea what he was there for. And how did this other possibly half white lighter, half witch come to be? And then you started to get the sense that he probably is related and from the future, and it all kind of progressed from there. And it was a very rich storyline that I remember watching. I watched that season live because I was so excited by the progress of that storyline that I had to find out what was happening next.
I liked the Chris storyline a lot too.
Thanks, Jessica.
That was one of my favorite ones because he was cute. You're not wrong. But also, for me, I really loved the deeper episodes where like more feelings were reached on. I can't remember what season it was, but Piper had gotten like a demon or something in her, and they orbed her into where Prue's body was.
Oh, yeah, the Fury. A Fury. She had a Fury in her.
Like those kind of episodes, I don't know, those were the ones that I always loved. And for some reason, the Chris arc had a lot of those like deeper meaning episodes in my opinions. So those ones were the ones that I was like, I like this. This is okay. And he's nice to look at.
I personally did not like Chris.
Oh, no.
The reason I didn't like Chris is because, I mean, I understood. The thing is, there was only 2 reasons why he could have been a half-witch white lighter, and I figured it out right away.
Me too, Michael. Me too.
Yeah, and so I was like, either he's going to kill Wyatt, which he wouldn't do that because that's his brother, but you won't know that till later on. But at the same time, it's like, he may be a mystery, but I don't like how he's going about trying to fix everything. It was just a bad way of doing things. There could have been a better way. Of course, you don't want to tell the future, especially not to his parents. But either way, you shouldn't have to have them go through the trauma of losing you once after getting shot. You shouldn't have to go through that trauma. That's some crazy trauma that they have to go through. I mean, they lost a lot of people, but for that moment right there, after finding out later, it's craziness. And then he's born though, which is cool.
Right, it all works out in the end. That's what it all works out in the end.
I did not hate that storyline. I thought it was pretty obvious, I guess. But again, I watched it way later, so maybe I already knew. But one of my favorite storylines was just the beginning when Leo was the handyman, but like,
oh yeah,
he's just like the hot guy from Return to the Blue Lagoon, and what's gonna happen? And I like that he like Piper, because I think she was portrayed as more of the plain sister, although she's like stunningly gorgeous. I guess she's considered Hollywood plain, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I loved that, like that love and affection they had. And then when he went away for a while, or we thought he was dead, right? Like we thought he died, but then he came back. He was so good. I like that. So now other people can say they liked it.
Okay. No,
I like how they did it. But when I figured out that, I was like, well, he's not evil, because most evil things that happen on the show either come up in fire, smoke, they blink or something. And he left out of like with white lights. And I'm like, well, it could be something good, hopefully. We don't know. We never know. That's the one thing about the show that I really like, is that you never really know, because a demon could be a good demon and you just not know it. And then that white lighters can be evil. So it's like, it's just like, who was it? Gideon? I hated him. I hated him so much. I hated him to my gut. I hated him so much. And I never liked Barbas. He's just one character that won't die. He's just the one character that will not die. Is Barbas. Like, come on, man.
Although, didn't the guy that portrayed him die in real life? Wasn't that Billy? What's his name? I can't think of it.
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, me neither.
I can look. I'm looking.
A fairly prolific character actor, though.
But I also, I'm a nerd, but I liked that they needed a handyman because their house was always being wrecked up. And I like how they referenced it all the time. Like, oh, this house, all the demons are destroying it. Because sometimes they can't address that stuff on shows and you're like, come on.
Well, now my question is, why did they stop using because after Piper got married to Leo, they should have kept using him as the handyman to make like more of like comedic effect, because the clock broke multiple times. Every episode, I think the clock broke. And then something always was going on in the house that involved something breaking. He could have fixed a lot of that himself. I mean, he even healed a pipe in someone's house that was broke, that was busted open. So I'm like, at least they used it once, but they could have used it more often. Not too terribly often, but often enough.
I mean, I guess I always believe that he did still fix the house after after a while. I mean, and it was just implied because he had done it so much and then he was married to her. You know what I'm saying? But no, I agree. Leo is one of my favorite characters. I do love that will they or won't they aspect of that story. One of my favorite episodes of the entire series is when Piper and Leo get married. And they bring back Grandma, and they bring back Mom, and Patty, and Penny, I believe. Penny Patty. And they bring the dad back, who they have an on-again, off-again estrangement with. And I just
like that actor, too.
Yeah, he's really
Well, do you remember they changed him? They did change him. They changed the two actors for the dad, which I actually prefer the dad that was in there that got in there with Paige. So he was my favorite, to be honest. He seemed more of a dad anyway.
Oh, I like the Salt and Pepper Fox. Decent looking older gentleman.
Dialed that back from Fox to decent looking older gentleman.
Oh, okay. So talking about episodes, the one episode I do like was when Phoebe, what was it? It was two Phoebes. There was a doppelganger Phoebe, not doppelganger, but a shifter demon Phoebe who tricked their sisters into taking her powers away. And then my favorite part was the end when she started fighting. You saw that martial arts come out, and I was like, that's Phoebe. That's the Phoebe I know. Because she was able to kill a demon, and that's the whole arc when Cole was becoming the source as well. And that's when, I think that was the second time around he was becoming the source, I should say.
Yeah, I really like that part of the storyline too, because Phoebe really took it upon herself to find a way to fight the demons, because she had the, what was that, empathy, or
she had premonition only for a long time.
And then later on, she becomes an empath.
Yeah, that's like season 6 or 7. But she had like levitation.
Right, but that was too big budget, so they had to replace levitation with empathy because the levitation blew the effects budget.
Yeah, and they took all her powers too.
I feel like her powers were the most booty. Hers weren't the best.
Yeah.
So that's how they set it up. That's pretty much how they set it up. And we talk about this later, but that's how they set up I think that's how they set up the new charm too. To be honest with you, that's how they kind of set that up too. But
yeah,
that's another rant for another day.
Yeah, I think I would want... Is that a question you were going to ask? Whose powers would we want? Did I jump ahead? Or did I make that up?
You can ask whatever you want. It's a Looking Back podcast. We do whatever.
What do you guys want?
I know who I wouldn't want. I would not want to freeze time, because half the time it didn't frickin' work.
Well, she doesn't freeze time. She doesn't freeze time. She freezes molecules.
That's true. That's how she gets to... Doesn't she get to blow stuff up later on?
She does. That's not a good power to have, though. That's very scary.
Well, they even tackled the...
I wanted.
Actually... What was it?
I think
Pruse?
Yeah, because
telekinesis?
Yeah, and she can astral project later.
Well, also, if you paid attention, if you remember that episode when she was fighting the empath, if you paid attention, she woke up and the astral projection was still in front of her. So that was kind of like a hint to her maybe able to clone herself later in the future.
Yeah,
if that would have stayed on and progressed, she probably would have stayed on. She probably been able to do that.
Yeah, I would want Prue's powers. As long as it didn't result in my death, I would want Prue's powers. I also want her job. She was an art historian, curator, auctioneer person.
But then she became a photographer later on, though.
Well, I wouldn't mind that either. The first job was cooler, maybe. The second job, you could travel.
I would want Piper's job, but I like to cook and bake things. But I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't want that job because maybe you don't like to do it when it's your job. I don't know. I enjoy it.
I just wanted to freeze people that were annoying me, so I wanted Piper's powers.
That's rude. Actually, to be honest, I would actually prefer to have
Phoebe's.
Yeah. The reason that
I would want Paige's. We're not talking about Paige.
Well, because the thing about Paige, the reason I don't want Paige is because I don't want the power to orb. Because the thing about Paige is that she's now technically, with her being half Whitelighter, she's now pretty much the property of the elders, which is why she hears that ringing in her head all the time. She's probably gonna be able to. She's probably
Angel Radio.
She's probably gonna have to be
supernatural
a
reference.
witch, a charmed one, and a Whitelighter to other witches, which probably is not going to be the best because she got to fight her own demons and protect other witches from demons. So it's going to be kind of split. She can't save everybody. And they've had the issue in the past. Ooh, which reminds me, speaking of that issue in the past, Andy. I was sad when he died.
Me too.
I was so sad when he died. Like, that was one of the scariest, I was like, when is he going to die? I don't know. I just saw the vision and Phoebe had it, so.
And him and Shannon had really good chemistry.
They did, but weren't they on the same show together at some point? Weren't they on like the same show together?
I don't know. It wasn't in my initial research, but I didn't do deep dives of like guest starring and stuff like that, so.
Oh, he's in the X-Files movie.
Which one?
The first one?
Is it Fight the Future or I Want to Believe?
It's Fight the Future.
Okay. I don't remember that, but I trust you.
But let's rewatch.
Okay. Watch party. Quarantine watch party. The truth is out there.
He's done a lot of work. I just was looking him up. I like to look things up as we go along because I have issues.
There's at least one a panel. It's okay.
Yeah, I have the timeline right here.
Riverdale tie-in. One of Shannon Doherty's recurring people that she works with, Jack Sheridan, is played by Lachlan Monroe. And he is on Riverdale, and he is Betty's dad. Ooh.
I mean, what?
If you'd like more information, feel free to listen to our Riverdale episodes. They're dynamite.
I made some really good jokes in it. I had some ringers in it.
Good.
And if you have any questions, you can tweet at us at CPU Podcast.
That's what Sarah does too.
You know, in there, even though I don't Twitter much myself.
You're just helping the people.
I'm just helping people reach us if they have questions. It seems like Michael might be a good one to ask when it's like
Charmed.
anything about the series because he knows everything.
Yeah.
He is obsessed.
I am. I'm watching all the seasons again for like, I think the 10th time, and I've only been, yeah, because I love it so much. I gotta finish season 2 of the new Charm. Still not too keen on it, but we can talk about that rant later.
We
will.
Trust me.
We've talked a lot about what we liked and speculated about powers. What, if anything, didn't you like about the original Charmed?
I'll start this one.
Oh, okay.
So
I just thought Jeremy.
you should know, Mike, I'm the hater. I'm the first to point out what I don't like about a show. So it felt like it was a little inconsistent between a lot of the seasons, especially with the first couple seasons versus the last few seasons. In particular, in the first couple seasons, they were very focused on the Wicca aspect of everything, which I felt came off as kind of kitschy. So I didn't really care for it that much. And they got away from that in probably the 3rd or 4th season, where it was more, for lack of a better term, mysticism than Wicca, which I found was a little bit more easier to swallow and kind of tied in better with all the different mythologies they were going for. So I felt like they did that so they could have a more broader scope for the show, which I thought that worked out well. That was one of my main, I guess, critiques for the first part of the series, I guess. I
agree with that. I think what probably was going on, I don't know when the show came out, but I think around the same year, the movie, I think what happened was since like the 80s, like late 80s, a lot of the cult stuff was still a big thing. They tried to play to that, but then as time went on, they were like, oh, maybe that's not a thing anymore. Let's try to go for more of that mysticism side. Well, it was the creator had a really big impact on the first season, but not after that. She was the one pushing for that Wicca following. And after the first season, I think she was pushed out. I don't remember what I actually read about it because it was a while ago, but she was the one who pushed for the Wicca. Okay.
You know what, Jeremy? Along those lines, I thought it was interesting that Kylie said this was on the list of top 20...
Magical, supernatural.
The list you read, Kylie said science fiction. And I was like, science fiction?
TV Guide in 2013.
I'm not sure this is science fiction.
Why is TV Guide even still around, for God's sakes?
I still read the TV Guide. Simmer down.
Calm down with you and your Reader's Digest over there.
That is different. They are not the same. Hate.
My parents just dropped off all their old Reader's Digests at my house. Don't worry, we social distance. They left them in a bag in my driveway. But I read all of their Reader's Digests because I'm an old lady. And I wait till they're really old and I read them. But anyway, I thought it was a surprising thing that it said science fiction because I don't see this as a science fiction thing at all. But if I'm wrong, you can tweet.
No, they didn't even have cell phones, for God's sakes.
Well, they did. They were just huge.
Yeah.
No, I would say it's not science fiction. It's pure fantasy.
Yeah, fantasy.
And it's even if you wanted to say, oh, but there's demons and werewolves and etc., it's not even horror because this was before they got brassy and gross with like shows like Supernatural on that network. So this to me is pure fantasy.
I will say one of the things that, and I mean, I've noticed this with other shows, not just with Charmed, but Charms kind of bugged me, like the random filler episodes that didn't really like seem to tie in anything. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Yeah.
Monster of the Week, Scooby-Doo's, one-offs.
I can't find a specific one, but there were times where I was like, do I have to watch this episode to understand what's going to happen next?
Like the one where Phoebe gets turned into a genie?
Yes, that one. That was the exact one I was thinking of too. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. I have something to say about that. They ran out of material that time. They just ran out. Like, they already had a genie when Prue was around. Why they got to have a genie when Paige is around? Sorry.
Well, they did this thing too at the beginning when they opened P3. They did this gimmicky thing that the WB loved to do. They did it in like Dawson's Creek and Roswell, where they had this big musical act and they stuffed them into like a weekly thing.
Yeah,
they did it on Buffy too.
They did.
Oh yeah, sure did.
It almost worked on this one because they happened to own a club, so it made sense that they were like excited that Third Eye Blind was.
God, I forgot about their club for a second there.
Yeah. But so it worked slightly better than like on Roswell, where they just wandered by and Nelly Furtado was playing. That was a legit that happened in those were always a little kitschy, and I was like, the whole point of this was just to get this band in here at P3, and we have to get the demon out before the band gets here. So I get what you're saying, Jessica. Like, some of them were not that.
They were just there.
Yeah.
But for me, that's kind of why I liked this show, because I'm drawn to the shows that have huge serial arcs. And granted, I just told you that season 6 was one of my favorites, and that has a mythology arc. And Sarah and I talk about this. She's all for the Monsters of the Week. I'm much more drawn to mythology. However, Charmed had that sort of light, even in the early seasons, there's a lightness about it. There's a humor about it where you could watch it and you were into it, but you didn't have to like focus all of your attention on it, because it was fun, magical, frothy stuff from time to time, like
it was
two genies.
Special showtime. I mean, it wasn't like Westworld where you got a notebook to keep track of everything.
Right, exactly. And you weren't going to miss out on too much if you weren't focused for a minute. Back then, we didn't have the pleasure of multiple screens to be engaged in at one time. So if we had to be distracted cleaning the house, for example, we could watch Charmed and do that too. I'm going to talk about the 8th season.
Can you refresh me what
That was rough.
Billy,
Kaylee Cuoco.
Billy.
Yeah.
Hey, don't judge Billy like that.
No,
okay?
that wasn't a bad Billy. That was Billy.
I was about to say, don't judge Billy. She was trying her best to help the charmed ones not have to go through so much, but
she was deluded.
you know, she had a sister. She was trying to find her. You can't just. I mean, the thing is, the one thing I was mad about was that they tried to say that Billy and her sister were supposed to be as strong as the charmed ones were stronger. That's a lie.
There's only 2 of them.
The power of 3.
Well,
they had the power of 2.
And that's part of it. So first you have some of these inconsistencies that you already referred to. I thought those were most glaring in season 8. It was clearly to me the network trying to extend the life on the show, when perhaps maybe they should have ended it at season 7 or maybe even season 6, because I thought the end of season 6, as tragic as it was, they could have added an epilogue and showed us it would have all been okay and it would have ended just fine.
What was the end of season 6 off the top of your head?
Chris dies.
Yeah.
So,
It's been a long time since I've watched him, so.
They could not just leave it at him dying. That would be a bad traumatic end.
no,
wait, what was
agreed.
7 then?
7?
See, nobody can remember it. They shouldn't have ended it there.
No.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Zanku. It was Zanku. They defeated Zanku and went into hiding.
Right,
The
exactly.
blew up Zanku and went into hiding. Which, the Nexus scares me. Or the Shadow. Whatever they call that thing, it scares me every time.
The
I don't care.
Nexus. Yeah.
Yeah.
The seasons, well, and that's why I'm saying they didn't have to end it where they ended it at season 6. They could have added an epilogue or done something in the 7th season maybe to round that out. We didn't need season 8. I'm happy with what they did. Ultimately, I think the back half of the season is okay because they wrapped up all this stuff, but introducing a character so late, they basically snatched Kylie Cuoco off of 8 Simple Rules as that ended, and just before her leap into Big Bang Theory territory. And then it just became... It was something that felt a little too forced and a little too rushed and a little too not satisfying, at least until they got to the last handful of episodes. And then they did really do a nice ending for the show. But I just didn't like season 8.
But the thing is, I guess they were losing their viewers. It felt like they were losing their viewers because it kind of felt rushed, which that's why I'm really glad that they came out with the comic books. That's why I'm really glad they came out with the comic books, because it actually didn't feel... I was like able to get right back into it and not feel as rushed. Like, the thing about Billy, though, that helped me with season 8 was the fact that you want to know where this witch come from, and they gave her backstory later on, but then her new power is what got me like tripping a little bit. I'm like, projection? She just teleported. There ain't no projection. What kind of projection is that? And so I personally liked Billy for her powers.
Okay.
Billy as a character, though, she was very like that new young witch trying to figure out her way, trying to get a hold on her powers, who doesn't have complete control. But she was kind of like that character that you're like, is she gonna die? When's she gonna die? She's gonna die in the series. Of course she doesn't, but I'm still, it makes you wonder, like, if she had a little bit more meat to her character, then maybe she would be a good like segue into like her teaching her kids, even though her kids probably knew more than she did about witchcraft, but still it's like actually making her a bit building up on her character more than what we saw, because she came in fighting Paige when we saw her, and I'm like, Paige studied with Phoebe. You ain't gonna win against Paige.
Well, and maybe if I had read the comic books, I'd feel better, but just taking it on its face value, that season compared to the other seasons, it just wasn't as fun for me, I guess, by that
I feel
point.
like it was one of the weakest. I feel like it was one of the
It says in Wikipedia that the main three had already chosen not to renew their contracts, and so they wanted to see if maybe after the 8th season they could have like a spin-off or something with Billy. And Kaylee Cuoco said, I think they just wanted a blonde girl. But she also said she prefers sitcoms because the 18-hour work days are like murder film, which I bet they are. That sounds really hard, says the person who now works 3 hours a day.
Well, these are...
You were Kylie Coco.
Me. Social distance.
Man, 3 hours a day. Oh, that's a killer, man.
I still work 8 hours a day. I
Zero.
still work 8 hours a day, and I'm working from home.
I guess, like, I always, maybe this is going to sound like I'm not a good sibling, but anytime I'm watching a show where the character's main purpose is to, like, avenge the death of their brother or their sister or something, I'm like,
You're like, that's not realistic.
I'm like, isn't there a love interest that could do that for them, or like a best friend? I love my siblings, but I got enough stuff going on. I don't have time to go avenge. This is terrible. Aren't I a terrible person?
No, because I would do this. I'd be like, you know what? Maybe I want to avenge your death, but I just won't talk to that person anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just wondering if any of them are listening and how they feel.
Well,
Certainly the actresses who played these sisters on TV.
one of my sisters has been on this podcast, so I adore her. But sorry, Chelsea, try not to get yourself killed by a demon or something, because I don't know if I have time to avenge your death. Right.
That's why they're never supposed to go anywhere alone. No person is supposed to go there by themselves alone as Piper. Because
Well, now that we're all social distancing, we have to go places alone.
Yeah. Well, they can do it over the phone. You can say spells over the phone. They did it twice, multiple times.
Call your nemesis on a Zoom conference call.
Vanquishing demons via Zoom nowadays.
Hey, the Power of 3 will work over Zoom.
they just mute you and be like, oh, I can't hear you. Can't hear those spells.
It'll set you free.
So here's a question, because one of the things that I read was that the creator, what was her name? Constance Berge?
Berg. Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons that she wanted to leave is because she didn't like how they were focusing more on romantic relationships and less on the sister relationships. So, like, one of the I mean, I loved Piper and Leo, but I also really liked the Cole and storyline. Like, that's one of my all-time favorites.
I feel like Cole was misunderstood.
Well, yeah.
Is everybody in Camp Phoebe here?
No,
What
no.
is Camp Phoebe? Describe
I
it.
can change him. My love will set this man free. We'll exercise those demons.
Then
Oh,
no.
I am a Phoebe.
No.
Oh, no.
I was more Camp Cole. I was like, Cole, you take her to the dark side.
Ooh.
Interesting how at first we just thought he was mysterious, and then we saw when Piper froze the courtroom that he didn't freeze, but they didn't see it. So then we knew something they didn't know, and like all that. And then he was a demon, and we knew, but she loved him, and then she tried to change him, and then he was in hell on a ledge, and it was all the things. What a roller coaster ride!
And then there was the evil Phoebe episodes, which those are some of my favorites.
Those are some good ones. But I don't know. Phoebe just, like, the thing about Phoebe, she was so impressionable that sometimes it scared me. Because you saw her from the moment she met the Woogie Man that she was the most impressionable one of them. And so it's like, I'm scared. Maybe she shouldn't date anybody. And Cole kept kind of come back into her life over and over. Good thing she found Coop, though.
Gosh, she shouldn't even have left the house some days. I swear to God, you could
No.
get poison from an ice cream van.
Right.
I will say that I really liked that story at first, but at some point, and probably it was after he was the source, but still trying to wrestle with whether or not he had enough humanity left in him to actually love her, and vice versa, it got a little tedious.
It did last a little too long. Like at one point I was like, dude, you're evil. Come on, let it go.
I like the ones where he had no powers, remember? And he was so scared and they had to like protect him and he kept running up to try to do his thing, but he couldn't do anything. Oh, so good.
And
I actually laughed every time. I had to.
and it
He hides
isn't.
behind Phoebe.
It's not a chore to look at Julian McMahon either.
No.
As my mom would say, I would not kick him out of bed for eating crackers and leaving crumbs. I wouldn't do it.
That's a deal breaker, lady. I've been watching 30 Rock, so that's where that.
It works.
But yeah, I don't know. I just love that. Phoebe seemed a little needy, like she always needed a man, though. And I was like, you can be single. It's fine.
She was single for most every season besides the time she met Cole, though.
That's true, because she was working on her.
Yeah.
She was doing yoga. She was working out. She was
had
trying
an
to teach herself
advice column.
karate.
Yeah.
She had an
It
advice
was just that
column.
one period of time when she was with Cole. That was the only time she had a man. And then after that, she became single.
After that, she was a life coach, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was always thirsty. She seemed on the prowl constantly. I think she was single, but not okay with it. And I was like, girl, if I had your body, I would be fine with it.
Season 10, she's a cougar.
She was also the most scantily clad until Paige came on the scene. And then they were like, let's have even less clothes for her.
Yeah, that was disturbing. I was like,
that was like a
but to
period.
me, Phoebe was still the hottest sister out of all of them. So it didn't really matter by the time Paige got on. I was like, still Phoebe's my favorite character just because of her powers. Like she can bounce things back with her emotions only. She bounced all those fireballs back to them demons like it was like tennis.
No, that was Paige doing that. She was orbing fireballs back to things.
No. Because when that one guy, he took over the Tribune, like he was, what's his name? It's not Leslie. It was another guy. It was season, I want to say 6.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, because he got kidnapped. He got kidnapped and then Phoebe saved him. And she literally pushed all the fireballs back because of her empathic powers. Her empathic powers, she feels other people's emotions. So she's able to bounce back those emotions at the same time, like she did with Piper. Because Piper tried to use telekinesis on her, but she had those emotions stacked up. Phoebe felt those, and it didn't hit it. When she got hit by telekinesis, she didn't move much. But when she hit Piper, Piper flew because it was bouncing back those emotions as well as those powers that she was trying to send to Phoebe. You gotta watch it. I paid very close attention. I know I did.
I don't know anything about all that, but I can tell you really passionately love Phoebe, and she's my least favorite. I don't not like her, but she's my least favorite sister. I just feel like she was so needy, emotionally needy, like constantly.
That's
I
a
will
good.
say,
Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
it's totally random, but I was like rewatching clips today before all this, and one of my favorite ones is when Piper realizes she can blow things up. And they're like, why'd you try to vanquish a watermelon? And I didn't. I tried to freeze it. And I don't know why, but that scene just tickles a funny bone.
That's a good question. I kind of agree with Sarah. Phoebe's not my favorite, not because of what she said. But I do agree that I think she's single and not okay with it. I think that is the running theme of her character. I liked Piper a lot at first. I think she was my favorite just because she did have to be the voice of reason between Prue, who kind of had a little self-involvement thing going on, and Phoebe, who was rebellious and kind of, determined not to get along, or determined to get along, but it going wrong all the time. But in the end, Piper got a little bit tedious in the later seasons, and I ended up liking Paige a lot. But she was very scantily dressed.
I really liked Paige. I just didn't like some of the writing they gave for her. I thought it was so interesting that she was a social worker at first, and I thought they could have gotten so many more nuggets out of that. But then she wasn't anymore, and she was like operating a magic school, and I don't know. I didn't care for that magic school storyline, I guess. But
I didn't either. I didn't care for the magic school. It was not my favorite. It really wasn't. They could have dealt without that a little bit.
Paige had a lot against her, I think, going into it because, I mean, I was a big fan of Prue. I know some people weren't, some people were, but they had to really, how are you all of a sudden going to have a different sister? How are we going to address it? And I think they handled it very well. And they had a really good backstory, a really smart concept, and a likable actress. And if they hadn't had those things, I think it would have tanked. So.
Oh yeah, that's one of the very few shows that I can think of off the top of my head where they actually lost a main character and it ended up turning out okay for them to continue. I can think of several examples where that same situation has happened and they've tried to replace and it either died quickly or died a slow, painful, torturous death. Do you remember the seasons enough? Mike might, but do you remember the seasons enough to say which are your favorite and which are your least favorite?
Yeah.
I'll start.
Only 4.
Yeah, you start. I got to scroll back to my notes.
I was going to say 1, 3, 4, and 6 are my favorite. 1, because that's the Piper and Leo give and take, flirtation, the introduction of the show. 3, because Leo comes back and they're in love, and then Cole gets introduced, so all of that is in that season. 4, because they really did introduce Paige very, very well, and all of the storylines around her introduction were very, very good. And then 6, because as the aforementioned, Chris was in that season, and I liked that story. That's my favorite. My least favorite is 8. Proceed.
I like 1. I like 3. 3, I like it because I liked it when Prue and Phoebe fought those wrestlers. That was my favorite. I also liked 4. 4 was a good one. And I did like 8. I will be honest with you, I did like 8. The reason I liked 8 was because I liked maybe in the last episode, when they actually fought when Billy and her sister fought the Charmed Ones and they had the hollow inside of them. I like that. That was my favorite part because they blew up the thing and then Pepper had to go back in time. And I'm like, oh, this is getting kind of messy now. It's getting really kind of messy. I don't know. Oh, but the one thing I didn't like, I think it was season 5, was when Cole was a part of the whole thing from season 1 to about the end of 5 or middle of 5. And then there was one episode that did not have anything to do with Cole at all. And it was the Gypsy one. That was the only episode that Cole was not involved in. And I'm like, he could have helped. He could have done something. But he was not involved in it. He wasn't dead yet. So it made no sense of why the episode even existed. I was like, I can do it out that episode, really.
I'm distracted because I just saw all the musical guests. That went back to my earlier point. I'm going to agree with Kylie's list pretty much. I love season 1. I'm just a nostalgic girl. And I don't mind season 2, but I like season 3 where we start to get the Cole storyline. I just love that journey. And yeah, I like season 4, the first Paige one. So I think 1, 3, and 4 are kind of my favorites.
I think for mine, I like seasons 2, 4, 5, and 6. There was one I was just reading back about that I forgot. That was one of my favorite episodes ever. Actually, a little story arc was when Leo gets sent to Valhalla and loses his memory, and then they have to go in disguise as Valkyries to Valhalla. That was in.
That's the one I was talking about. That's the one I was talking about where Piper had telekinesis. And she tried to hit Phoebe with it, and Phoebe bounced it right back to her.
Those are my favorite seasons. Like I didn't really care for 7 and 8 that much, but the very middle of the road, I guess, because 2 was the best part of the Prue seasons, I think, without the drama from 3 or the whatnot, and then 4 and on.
Jess, do you have any favorite seasons?
I have been watching so much TV lately that I can't remember, and I didn't write it down. So I really enjoyed the first few seasons, and I really liked the season when Paige first came in.
It's 4.
But other than that, it's all kind of blurring together.
And I think that's a problem with some of these shows anyway, is that they are somewhat cookie cutter. So like there's a lot of different elements from Charmed, Supernatural, Buffy, Angel, that kind of all blend together because it's all stuff that they've already done once before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were all contemporary. Even Supernatural Supernatural started the latest of all of those 4 shows.
And that's probably the one that sticks out the most, honestly. It's the Charm, the Buffy, and the Angel that definitely do tend to blur together, though.
Those were
I
all
will say,
contemporary.
I can't remember what season, but the Chris and Wyatt stuff was definitely something that kept me pulled in.
Season 5.
6.
Okay.
2003.
Trust.
I go with that one, that answer.
Okay.
Oh, 5 was when Wyatt was born, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was crazy. They lost all magic during that time. They lost all magic. I'm like, how? How do you lose magic from a magical baby?
Well, that whole I did enjoy the storyline of just how special was Wyatt going to be and what was Wyatt going to be in the future, just because of the circumstances of his birth and who his parents are. And I like all that seeding that they did.
And seeing Piper's powers go crazy because she's preggo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those were interesting. Like her
I
didn't
felt
work.
bad.
Isn't that when she started exploding things accidentally?
Actually,
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Instead of blowing things up, making flowers appear.
Oh, yeah.
That baby was not happy. Was not like, you're not going to hurt anybody, mommy. Sorry.
So let's talk about the series finale. If you recall it, I haven't watched this probably since it came on, but I recall it very vividly because it's one of those series finales where you can tell that the writers, and by this time Alyssa and Holly and Rose were all executive producers because of the longevity that they had on the show. You can tell that they all had a contribution to it. It was very sort of love letter to the fans of the show in terms of how they wrapped it up. Did you think that it was a proper send-off for the characters? Why or why not?
I think it was. Just because for those who are like diehard fans, they're watching it, so they know like how the show has kind of met its end. And so I liked how they left pieces behind for other witches, other people in their family to find. That way they wrote different notes. Because even from the beginning, they were writing notes. Their mother started writing notes. Their grandmother started writing notes. And so it's like toward the end, it's time for them to write things, whether it's about past loves, whether it's to how to balance themselves as witches and as people of society. And I liked how they definitely made that work for them. But at the same time, I'm like, what happened to Wyatt? What happened to the future? What's going on with these kids? Who are all these grandchildren? Like, what is going on? Like, I want to, like, it's like that want to know feeling like, oh, I want to know what happens next. Like, do they stay the charmed ones? Do someone else, does another generation of people become charmed ones? Because there was only one prophecy that said they were the charmed ones. So it's like, what's going to happen next? Is Billy going to take over the match?
Why is Billy watching your babies?
Right.
that really stuck in my head. Like, oh, she's dressed like a nanny watching the babies. They put her to work.
And then Phoebe had kids too. So you're like, what is Phoebe's kids like? If she married a Cupid, she had three. No, she had three.
Yep.
It says that they all have 3 kids.
Well, actually, Paige's child, the boy, she has twins, but the boy, the only boy child she has, is not her child. That's her adopted son.
But that's from the comic books or from
it's from comic books.
I don't think that's canon. I don't want to be...
I don't know. I think it is canon. They followed along pretty well with the series.
But someone else say things. I don't know. I'm reading the synopsis online, and it says they have twin girls, and then they have Henry Jr. I mean, they could have come along after that and really said anything, but I think according to the episode when it aired, that was their intent, I guess. It also says that Piper has a 3rd daughter named
Melinda. Prudence.
According to this, but
Well, yeah, because according to Wikipedia, the show ends with Prudence closing the door with telekinesis like Prue did at the end of the first episode, something Wicca this way comes.
But I mean, I'm not saying that
We don't know.
we don't know. It just I feel like sometimes when they do the comic books after, they change stuff. So, but that's what this says here, that they all end up having 3 kids. So the power of 3, y'all.
So what? So
That's a lot of power in 3.
It is. It's multiplied.
I guess I liked the very end where the little girl closed the door as a nod to Prue. Anytime I'm watching the series and there's somebody that leaves the series, I want them to come back in the finale. I know it's irrational, and I know it doesn't always happen, but that's what I want. So, of course, I wanted that. I wanted there to be a way for that, and I think they did the best they could with that.
Jeremy, Jess, what do you think of the finale?
I liked it. It was a good ending. I feel like all ties that could have been tied up were tied up. I don't remember it because I'm like you. I only watched it the one time, so I was going back and rereading it on Wikipedia. But yeah, just it felt like an ending to me. It didn't feel like they could like pick it up again so many years down the line. At least in my not with Piper, Prue, and Paige. Not Prue, sorry, Piper, Phoebe, and Paige. It left it open for their kids, especially with Prudence closing the door and showing that powers carried on to the next generation. But other than that, I was pretty content with it.
That's what I would say. I was content with it. It felt like the proper ending for it. We all knew it was going to end before it ended, so it wasn't like a shock to us. It was its time, so I was okay with it.
Brilliant segue to the next question, because now I'm going through our standard looking back questions. How do you feel about the original run of the show now that time has passed? Does it hold up? Was it time for it to go after its 8th season, or would you have watched more seasons, or should it have ended sooner? What do you think and why?
I still love it to this day. I do wish that, the only thing I do wish is that they would have, season 8, they would have taken a little bit more time on. Just a little bit more time on it, because that could have definitely helped with continuing it. But not everything can happen like that. Like, not every show can be that kind of show where it can continue. It has to be at a point. Like, for instance, I'm saying this just because I have to. Supernatural should have ended a while ago.
Stop it all! I don't agree.
I'm so sorry. I had to say it because after a certain point, I was like, what is going on in this show?
No,
what
Mike,
is happening?
We're on the same page there. Me and Kylie discussed this many, many times.
That is for our Supernatural panel, which we already have, which Jeremy is on.
Do you have a Vampire Diaries channel too?
We already did that one. We actually had a panel and it's done.
Ask her about Legacies.
What about Legacies?
I will put you on the list.
Okay, sorry. Okay, but yeah, I just think that if they would have took a little bit, because I was pretty fine with how they were doing it up until season 7, but season 8 felt way too rushed for me. The story just didn't really, Billy coming in there, like you said, just didn't really make it mesh together. I wish they could have just kept doing they could have done the hiding thing. Like, I like how they were able to get out of hiding, especially with Piper being like, that identity thing being a thing for her. But I still think that they could have done a little better in just making the story continue, even though it seemed like Billy being brought in there was like how you said, they could continue with someone else, but they already had their own children. They were already having their own children, so they should have just kept it going with that. That's all I had to say about it.
I feel it ended when it should have. I think if anything, it should have ended a little sooner. There was a few points in the 8th seasons where it felt like the third Lord of the Rings, where like it should just end already. Like, it just kept going on and on and on. And I'm like, okay, I'm over this. I'm now watching it just so I can see the end.
I need a Jeremy translation from other people. Is that the common belief about Lord of the Rings, or is that just a Jeremyism?
Did you ever see you saw the third one?
That's a Jeremyism. I completely disagree with what he's saying.
At the end of the last Lord of the Rings, it cuts to black like 6 times and it opens back up to another scene, and you think it has ended all those times.
That's true, but I enjoyed every single cut to the scene again because I was bawling my eyes out each and every time. And those are my favorite.
And I have no feelings about it whatsoever, except that one tree that walks around and carries the little hobbits. Otherwise, I don't know.
The end. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'll be honest.
I didn't know if that was a common thought about it, or
as a Harry Potter fan, I dislike Lord of the Rings.
You can like both. You do not have to be mutually exclusive. I love both. I don't understand.
It's not like Republicans and Democrats.
Right? We're all one happy family.
For me, it's just Harry Potter. It just always had a place in my heart. And when I saw Lord of the Rings, I was like, this is just not for me. I need more magic in this show than what they're giving me. I don't need creatures. I need magic.
I like it all.
That's a whole other conversation we can get into.
I was going to say, so one of the questions is, does Charmed hold up? First, I'll say that I agree with Jeremy. If anything, I thought it should have ended sooner. Probably after season 6 or 7. I felt like 8 was a stretch, and if they were trying for a spinoff, I agree with you, Michael. The spinoff that was obvious was the Leo and Wyatt show, not the Billy show. I did not know why she was there, and I never really could connect to her character. It's no fault of the actress, and it's really no fault of the writers. It was just too late of a stage in the game to insert her, but if there's a comic book about her, maybe I'll feel differently and once I read that. But as far as does the show hold up, here's what I'm going to say. It's a mixed answer. Because I actually tried to go back and rewatch the whole series before I sat down, and I didn't get very far because I felt like the Prue seasons actually don't hold up very well. They have sort of a very dated quality to them. They feel essentially 90s and like they're never going to be anything else, which I love the 90s, so it's not a big deal. But the Page seasons feel a little bit more timeless just because of how they shot those, and maybe because they were after the millennium, and I don't know. But it doesn't have that same sort of ethereal, timeless quality that other shows in this genre do. I don't know how people feel.
I hear what you're saying, but I almost feel the opposite just because I can watch the Prue seasons with nostalgia, I guess, for the 90s. And like, oh, look at, we all were wearing those laced front jeans with the 2 inches of midriff showing. Like at the fashion, I see the fashion and I see some of that stuff. And I'm like, oh, college was fun. But then when I watch the Page ones, I don't have that same sense of nostalgia. And I think it's kind of what Jeremy was saying when they shifted away from the like Wiccan and into the more fantastical. Some of it I found just a little bit hard to get on board with. It maybe just went in a direction that was like too fantastical for me. And so I don't want to watch a lot of that in a loop, like binge it, I guess.
Do you think the show ended at a good point? Could have gone on longer and sooner?
I think it could have ended sooner for me. I think it could have ended if they had written it better after the Chris storyline. I think that could have been the final storyline with add on 6 more episodes, though, kind of after that to wrap up their lives. Or maybe not 6. I don't know. I'm not a writer, but...
And I think with a lot of these TV shows, once you get past that 5-year mark, it's either going to go really well or like once that kid's starting to go to high school, you got to end things. Like it's not so cute anymore. Like it gets to a point where there's so many things are set in stone at that point that you're just like, okay, well, I know how this is going to go because there's already been 7 other years of it, and I can see the cookie cutter responses coming up.
Like the perfect analogy to me of what Jeremy's saying is if you look at Piper's overall arc. It's so exciting at first. And she's this new witch and all this. And then she meets this guy and he's mysterious and blah, blah, blah. And then they're together finally after all of this time. But then when they start having kids, the minutia of it kind of sets in for me. Like now she's like dealing with daily details of like fixing the house. And I don't know. It just gets to be like, let's stop where we are.
It's like when you look too closely at anything, it starts to lose its magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, but then again, there's people that are now rewatching this because the new one is on, and they're certainly enjoying it. So
another rant for another day.
Yeah, for sure.
Jess, do you have any opinion on that question?
I loved Charmed when it first came out, or well, I guess I'll say when I started watching it because I didn't watch it while it was live. But I tried to sit down and rewatch it for this, and I just couldn't. And I don't know why. I don't know if there was just so many episodes or what it was, but it was one of those shows that for me, it's like a one run and that's it. I don't know if part of it's because I don't want to ruin that nostalgia feeling because, like, not to get emotional, but I watched it with my mom who has unfortunately passed. And I don't necessarily want to rewatch it without her. But I do agree that it could have ended earlier than it did. Where it could have ended, I don't really have a solid opinion on because... like I said before, everything's kind of starting to run together. But I definitely think it could have ended before 8 seasons.
So, as we've mentioned, Charmed was created by Constance Berg. And she really hasn't done anything since. She created Savannah, which was a 2-season soap that aired on the WB before this show. And I hadn't even heard of it up until I did this research. But let's say she came back out of the woodwork and made a TV show. Had a concept, executed it, whether she was stuck to it as a full-time writer or not. Would you watch it?
I would not watch it just based on her. I wouldn't be like, oh, Constance Berg has a new show. I'm going to watch it. I would not. But very few people would have that effect on me. I think the only one that I would say that maybe 2 people would be like Ryan Murphy or Greg Daniels. Other than that, I don't watch based on the creator and based on the person. So my answer is no, but I might not be the best to gauge for that.
I think I would be less likely to watch it if I knew she created it, honestly, because I didn't like her input in the first season. So I don't think I would like her having too much control over a new show. And the fact that she left the show after 1 season for creative differences says either she's very passionate about it or not willing to work with the producers and get something that's going to be more palatable for a larger audience. So I don't think I would watch it if I knew it was specifically from her. You'd have to sneak it up on me.
I don't think she left until after season 3.
Either way, 1 and 3 were my least favorite seasons besides 8, so...
I do think she left either shortly before or shortly after Shannon Doherty left. There was a lot of strife on that early set of cast members and writers and stuff.
I think it would all depend on the show itself. Whether or not I would come back to watch it because it's her that's doing it is debatable, but if it was a show that caught my attention, I'd probably give it a try.
I wouldn't watch it. The reason I wouldn't is because she is not a Ryan Murphy where I would watch whatever he wrote just because he wrote Glee, so I watched that. He wrote American Horror Story, so I watched that. And American Horror Story, though, that's my stuff right there. Like, I'll talk about that all day. But I since she wasn't, I didn't even know she was the creator until like the other day, and I'm like, oh, well, she's not that big of a deal for me because she doesn't catch my attention. Like, she doesn't do things consistently. If she does things consistently, then yeah, I'll watch it. But since that didn't happen, it's not going to catch my attention to watch her.
She wasn't around for the majority of the show.
Well, there's that. And I am a person who will key into a creator, particularly if they are established. Like, you know, Sarah mentioned Ryan Murphy. That's a good example. Joss Whedon, I will sit down tomorrow and watch anything that he creates. J.J. Abrams, kind of the same thing. He's coming out with a new HBO show. I'm very excited. With this one, she had a good idea. It's one good idea. She had another show that I'd never heard of, and I'm really dialed into TV. And I don't think that this concept alone would make me say, oh, she's just, you know, a great creator and I'm going to watch all of her stuff. Now, if something else came out, it caught my eye, I realized she was the person that was behind it, maybe I'd consider it, but it would not be a motivating factor. Have you or would you follow any of the cast members to past, present, or future projects? Why or why not?
I have.
Okay, so go ahead, Jess.
So I followed Holly Marie Combs onto Pretty Little Liars.
Yes.
Because I read the books before it became a TV show, and when I saw she was on it, that kind of just drew me into it even more. I also followed Drew Fuller onto Army Wives, which, more nostalgia, is a show I watched with my mom. So it definitely was like nice to see that. And I love Big Bang Theory, so Kaylee, I can't say her last name.
Coco.
Thank you. So I definitely followed a couple of them on. But honestly, a couple of the times I didn't even know they were on it until later. Like, I started watching it and then I was like, oh, I know that face. So that's where I'm at. I followed Shannon Doherty because of my brain just blanked out.
90210, Melrose Place?
No, because she has a guest appearance on Riverdale.
Ah.
So that's the most recent thing I've seen her on.
See, I went the opposite direction. I followed Shannon and Alyssa to Charmed. I don't know that I've followed either of them since. I might check out Army Wives just because of Drew Fuller.
It's so good.
Okay.
If you watch This Is Us, the brother on This Is Us is in it too. I can't think of his name, the one who is adopted.
I haven't started that one yet, so I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Don't know if I just spoiled it.
I don't watch that show, but I was like, who's adopted? And then I realized what you were saying.
Yeah, that brother is on Army Wives, which is what I knew him from. It's got a really amazing cast. Not to plug another show, but it is a really good cast.
Okay.
So.
The only one I've really followed, and is just recently actually, which is going to sound really weird when I tell you what show it is I just started watching Nip Tuck.
I hear that's a good show.
It is, and I'd only ever seen one episode before, which is the infamous hot tub episode.
It's Ryan Murphy's first one.
Yeah.
So I followed Julian, I think his name is, isn't it?
Julian McMahon.
And he is even less of a human in that show than he is in Charmed. It's Demon Lord. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And if I saw, he's one of my favorite actors, honestly. I like him a lot in a lot of stuff he does. I would definitely follow him onto somewhere else. Or Holly Marie. I just haven't seen her in anything. Because Pretty Little Liars and that kind of stuff is not really my cup of tea.
So I don't know. I know I'm maybe the last remaining human on the planet watching Grey's Anatomy. I recognize it. I might. But last season, or maybe it's even this season, time has no meaning anymore for me.
Especially with Grey's Anatomy, because how many seasons has this been on now?
15.
Holly Marie and Alyssa did a guest spot on Grey's Anatomy where they played two sisters whose third sister was in an accident and is non-responsive, and they have to decide whether they're going to take that sister off life support, which is what the living will states, but they have to come to terms with it. Do you want me to spoil this?
Yes, please.
Spoilers to all Grey's Anatomy watchers.
Yes, but it's not new, so they've probably seen it. As they decide, they shut it down, and they shut off all the machines. The phone rings. The sister that's dying's phone rings, and Holly Marie answers it and is like, "Oh, it's her friend Ashley." And she's like, "Hi, Ashley," and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's her sister calling on Ashley's phone to say that her bag got stolen." So they have just taken some thief off life support, but their sister isn't dead. But it's kind of funny because they're both like, "What's going on? Heather, you're here? You're on the phone?" Like, they can't.
How do they not know it's her sister?
Was the voice on the telephone
so
Shannon
beautiful.
or Rose?
That would be hilarious.
It was Shannon.
We don't know. Dun,
dun.
The person's been hit by a bus or something. So the only way to identify them is through the ID, the bag that they have, which has the wallet, the phone, all this.
They were really disfigured. I did see that episode. I do remember it.
Even if you don't watch that show, you should just check that episode out for Holly and Alyssa, because they're really good in it. Like, they're emotional.
What season was it?
This one. Wasn't it this one?
I think it's this season. So Hulu is probably...
I'll go to the internets for you guys.
Interweb.
While she's looking that up, that's for a Grey's Anatomy podcast, which does not exist because I'm the only one that wants it.
No, there's actually quite a few people, and I'm sure Sarah will moderate it. So tweet at CPU Podcast to put it into the queue. We need one more person.
Yeah, everyone who wants to do it is all 38, 39 years old, right?
I just turned 40, buddy.
We're the same. We're almost the same age.
But no, I have not followed any of these people. I did watch 90210, so I guess I'm like Kylie. I followed Shannon here, but I haven't followed, and I don't usually follow specific people. I just like to see where they turn up.
Yeah, you like to be watching TV and go, "Oh my God, it's that one person from that one thing."
Are you stalking me? How do you know?
I'm outside your window right now.
Weird.
I have a backdrop.
But I do like to do that, Jeremy. Like that.
No, I'm the same way, especially with voices. Like celebrities' voices. I'm like, "Oh my God, I can hear that voice. It's so-and-so from so-and-so."
Yeah.
I do follow people. I mean, it depends on the person and it depends on the show. Speaking of Supernatural, anything that those two boys do, I'll just be following. Especially Jensen.
What about Walker, Texas Ranger?
I'll try. I may not like it. I may give up. But Jared, he earned it.
So, do you like scary movies?
Sometimes.
He does not. I do.
Sometimes.
Okay, so one of the guys from, I can't remember who it is, because whoever plays Dean, he was actually in a movie called, I think it's Spit on My Grave or something like that. He was in some horror movie, and he was actually pretty good at it. I liked it. But anyway, sorry.
So just as a reference for this panel, if you haven't listened to Supernatural or our Friends panel, if I were to have a number one of 5 celebrity cheats, Jensen Ackles would be the celebrity cheat. I'm just saying.
Same.
Okay, so I can't find the episode, but it's season 16. And funny enough, all the sisters have H names.
Yeah, they do. They're like Heather, Heidi, and
something else. Yeah.
Like Harper or something. Yeah.
Harriet.
Somebody was clearly a Charmed fan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it was season 16, so I don't know the episode number, but...
I followed 2 of the Charmed ones. I followed Holly Combs and Rose McGowan. I followed Holly Combs to Pretty Little Liars when I found out she was on there, but then I stopped watching Pretty Little Liars because it got confusing.
True.
And then I followed Rose McGowan. She guest starred in Once Upon a Time.
Oh, that's right, she did.
Yep, she guest starred as Regina's mother when she was younger.
That's right.
And
I
then
was
also
already
on
watching
that
it,
panel.
though.
Rose was also in a horror movie. I think it's called Grindhouse.
Yep, she was.
Yes.
She was in that, and I loved it. I was like, she got one leg, shoot a gun, yes.
You know, she's in Scream. She's in Scream.
She is. Oh yes, she is. She
Yeah.
sure is in Scream. That was now. I didn't like that movie. I didn't like that particular.
Well, everybody's wrong sometimes, my really like
Scream and Supernatural and Lord of the Rings.
I almost just spit tea everywhere.
Scream redefined an entire genre, but we don't. That's for our
It's a whole different show.
Scream podcast. I don't know. It's never happened.
So here's the $1 million question for you. If somebody came up to you and said, should I watch the original Charmed, Shannon, Holly, Alyssa, Rose, would you recommend Charmed to others? Why or why not?
I still do to this day. I still
I
do
would.
it till this day.
Why or why not?
Because it pretty much depends on how you were raised. It had depends on how you were raised. Because some people I know, they were not allowed to watch Harry Potter because of witchcraft. So they don't like it now and they can't get into it now. Now, if they were able to watch Harry Potter, I'm like, maybe you should try this TV show out. You may enjoy it. But if they ever, another rant for another day, but I'm going to segue into it. If they ever say, oh, I like the new Charmed, watch the old Charm first before you start liking the new one, because they paved the way for this new one to come out. Ran over. But yeah, I would definitely recommend the old one just because you can see the progression of time very much so throughout the show, because it doesn't just stay in like one time period. You can see how everything changes. They age. They don't just, because some shows like Supernatural, I don't know if they age or not in that show. To be honest with you, I don't know if they age.
Not as many seasons as they've been out.
They do. If you go back to season
would age you a
one,
little bit more.
if you go back to season one, you can tell. And yes, it's real time. But that's my I will defend that until my dying breath.
God, yeah, if you could get Chris from Charmed out of Supernatural, she would die a happy woman.
That would be a comfortable hat trick, I have to say. Hockey! Hockey!
Is that the one with the net?
I knew what a hat trick was.
Thanks, Jess.
That's like what the guy does with the rabbit,
no.
right?
It's like a turkey in bowling.
I know bowling. I just had
That's
to
what a
think about
hat
it for a
trick
second.
is. It's like a turkey in bowling.
We've gone into
Not
sports.
right. I can't.
Okay, calm down with
I
the
grew
labels
up
there.
in Northern-
Sports, bowling, no.
Sports
I
ball.
grew up in northern Michigan and in a hockey family. I know the terminology. It's fine.
The rest of us are nerdy theater kids, so we're just
But
not.
I'm that too.
I'm a 30-year kid too. I do theater, all Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo only.
I knew what it was. I just want to pretend to be the dumb blonde person who doesn't understand math. Because it's cute.
Jury's out. So would you recommend Charmed for those who haven't answered?
Yes, I would.
I mean, probably not. But I mean, maybe if you're like trapped inside for weeks on end with nothing.
Like now.
So right now.
So it's good
Yeah.
quarantine binging is what you're saying?
Not the best, because it didn't make my top list that I sent you, but I guess
Good. You know CW is not slending her any money under the table or anything.
they're not. No. I'm going to say I probably wouldn't. Honestly, I probably would not.
Jess, why
So-
would you?
For nostalgia reasons, just because like they've said, like you see the progression of time, like you see the styles changing and how like everyday life is changing. And I don't know, I always tend to recommend the shows that nobody else recommends. Like I recommend Riverdale, and Sarah just gave me a look.
All of these shows, it's like really hard to say. It depends on your audience.
It really does.
And Sarah loves watching terrible things.
If somebody came up to me and was like, some of my favorite shows are Buffy, Roswell, Seventh Heaven, and Dawson's Creek, I'd be like, well, then you should probably watch Charmed, because those are the ones that go
right.
you know? But if they're like, oh, I like The Office and Parks and Rec, I'm not going to be like, you should watch Charmed.
I think I would, though, just because nobody asks my opinion really other than my friends, and I'm one of those people that I'm like, you don't have to like what I like, but could you give it a try, maybe? So watch this show.
See, I will recommend it, but I think Kylie will appreciate this answer. I recommended it in the way if you've got some time on your hands and you need something on the TV that you can put on and enjoy while you're doing other things, even if that's reading a book, put on Charmed.
That's not a ringing endorsement, but okay.
Because it's good. It's good for background noise. It's good for background storyline, and it's good for just general floof.
It's only good if you've seen it before, though, because I know I've rewound the show like multiple times because I was like, what was that? Wait, what just happened? Like, and I have to go back because even if I'm still watching it and I know every episode as is, I still have to go back because I like to see the effects that happen, whether Phoebe gets thrown across the room or they both get flown back throughout a church. Like, I like to see the action of what happens because I'm like, did that just happen? What just happened? So I like to see the stuff. So. And sometimes I like to pause it at certain points too, because you can just see like facial expressions or I like it.
Is there anything else that you want to say, if you haven't already said it, about the original Charmed? Ooh.
Nope.
I have said my piece.
You've said your piece. It sounds like everybody said their piece.
Piper is still the strongest Charmed one.
What did you say?
Piper is the strongest Charmed one.
No, actually, it's Paige.
I think it's Piper.
No, Paige has all the powers of a white lighter and a witch. It's in the fandom.
Piper is still the strongest Charmed one. Paige might have more powers. Piper's still the strongest. She was still the baddest when Prue died, when Prue was alive, when she got that blowing
That's because she has the mom energy.
Yep, that's why. You always gotta be scared of a mom. Did you ever?
Mom energy is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when she became a Titan, she was a real mother. She was a mother of nature, and she almost destroyed the whole.
She was a real mother.
No. Piper is a badass. She kind of has a special place in my heart, personally. I'm more connected to her than Paige, but I do like Paige.
I like Piper more than Paige. I just think Paige is the more powerful one.
I see. Based on the number of powers she has.
And hers are more versatile, in my opinion.
I see. That is true. They are versatile.
She could orb your liver out of your damn body.
She orbed a baby out of a body.
That's true.
She could make $100,000 a year doing that.
She could still get her power taken away from by the elders, though.
That's true.
Yeah, they all can, though.
No, they can't.
The elders are a fascist organization.
They can't.
That's definitely a true statement.
I didn't like the elders at all. Even when Leo was one, I did not like them. So
Yeah, but in the logic
And
of
the
the
new
show,
one, too.
they
No,
can't
don't like
strip
either.
a witch of their powers. They can only strip white lighters.
I'm pretty sure they did it a couple times in the history of the Charmed show.
Not for the witches.
I was reading about it in the old witches, like 1600s.
Well, we didn't see it for the witches we saw on the show, but we did see it to all the white lighters. So
Yeah, I mean, what happens usually with the old Charmed ones is whenever they had a past life and the past life had a power, if the past life didn't use that power very well, they don't keep it into the next. Phoebe and Prue. Don't forget, Prue had the power to like ice or something like that. But she lost it because she misused it. Every time they misuse the power, they lose that power. Like Paige, she had the power of elements. Her equal self misused it, and so Paige doesn't have that anymore.
Jeez,
Well,
maybe I have to
happened
rewatch
with-
this.
That's what happened with Phoebe's premonitions, too, at one point.
With Phoebe, she had the power of she never.
She was using it to gamble or something. Or
Yeah, and so
forcing her
it was
premonitions.
the way she used her powers overall because of Barbas. Barbas was a part of like that panel of the evil, the good, and all that stuff. Demons and white lighters and witches.
Tribunal.
The tribunal, yeah. And so when Barbas was there, he was like showing them everything that was going on with the tribunal. So in order to make sure that they didn't all lose their powers, Phoebe gave up hers because hers was the most ones used for personal gain, being able to feel other people's feelings. So she's able to do that. And then her psychic ability, of course, being able to see the future and make things happen that really shouldn't happen, which is really bad altogether. But I'd rather have Phoebe take her powers away, her active powers away, than her actual witch everything. And even though they thought that it would make them weaker, it really made them stronger because it made them be more resourceful and relying on other things. Because Phoebe was very resourceful even when she didn't have her powers. I mean, didn't have like the active powers that her sisters did.
Anything else you want to say about the original Charm before we sign off?
I'm good.
Well, if you're good and you've all said your pieces, what I'd like to do is thank Jeremy, Jessica, Michael, and Sarah for joining me on our very first episode of this Looking Back to Look Forward series. But don't go away just yet. We have more to this Charmed series, but before we get to that, it's time to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation Point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, Charmed, both the original and the reboot, are available on Netflix, as that is the service that currently has the most WB and CW shows. Not like they pay us to say that or give us their free subscriptions. Netflix, it's been years. Come on. In the meantime, our Charmed panel will next reconvene very shortly, in fact, to discuss Season 1 of the Charmed reboot and Part 2 of this Looking Back to Look Forward series. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.
Bye.